Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with a spoiler video for Battle for Zendikar in case you missed the PAX Prime tonight. It just happened a few minutes ago. And we had some very juicy spoilers with a lot of the new mechanics and the land cycle, which is really, really cool. So I'm going to talk about this in the rogue market aspect, as well as just theory and just a spoiler video in general. So before we get into the lands, let's just talk about what we found out spoiler-wise, the mythics that we have. The first one coming up being Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Now, Ulamog is a pretty sweet card. I apologize for the quality. These are the best images that I can find so far at mythicspoiler.com. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, is a 10 mana for a 10/10. Not quite sure if it's much better than the Ulamog that exists already, or Emrakul. I think that if any deck wants to have this in, it will be Modern's either Tooth and Nail or just plain Tron. I think that 10 mana is a bit even hard for Tron to get out. I guess if you do have an extra tower, you can have perfect mana for. So you get 3 from both the towers and then 2 from the mine and the power plant, and that'll be exactly 10. And what's really cool about Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger is it's when you cast Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, exile 2 target permanents, and it's cast. So if it is countered, then it's still, the triggered ability still happens as it's cast. And exiling 2 permanents in Modern is pretty much backbreaking, especially being able to get this out as quick as turn 4 in Tron. I think that Tron maybe want like a 1-of, and you might see Tron go back to using the Eldrazi, not Temple, the Eye of Ugin to get specifically Eldrazi's and then cast them that way. Ulamog used to be a 1-of in a lot of the Tron lists until Ugin was printed, and then Ugin filled the void that really the Ulamog had in that deck. So, but this one is very interesting. With a 10/10 indestructible, it can be chump blocked a lot, but when it does attack, defending player exiles the top 20 cards. So if you attack basically twice with Ulamog, you're pretty much going to mill them out. And it not only is it milling them, it's exiling them. There's no way that they're going to get them back. Well, was no way until this set was printed. That with the processors, we'll go over the processes here in a little bit. They can actually dig cards out of exile, and which is a pretty interesting mechanic. So Ulamog definitely will see play in Tooth and Nail type decks or Tron type decks as possibly one of. I don't see it impacting the modern metagame too much. It's just another option for Tron, but in Standard, I'm sure this card will see some play with the ramp type strategies. Next card is Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, and this card is a Planeswalker. It says, let me just read the text, it might be a little small for you. Until end of turn, Gideon, Ally of Zendikar becomes a 5/5 human soldier ally creature with indestructible. That's still a Planeswalker, and you prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. That means his loyalty cannot be affected as the damage is being prevented. And so I wish it said until the next turn, because then it might just be a little too overpowered, because then he'd be able to basically be indestructible, his loyalty counter from like damage or from kill cards like Hero's Downfall type cards. But you won't be able to attack him the first turn, so you're usually going to use a 0 on the first turn. So he's a 4 mana Planeswalker with 4 starting loyalty that's going to get a 2/2 creature to protect it, which that's I actually like this card a lot. I think it's perfectly balanced. Another cool thing about Gideon is his -4, his ult, is what we like to call him in kind of Magic the Gathering lingo, is you get an emblem with creatures you control get +1/+1. That's pretty good if you have a token-based strategy. I could actually see you going for a -4 right off the bat if you don't think you can protect Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, or if you're staring down lethal with your creatures. It's not just creatures tokens, it's all creatures. So if you have like a rounding out a curve in like a white weenie deck, I think Gideon with Raise the Alarms is actually going out with Raise the Alarms, but there's plenty of token-based cards in Standard at the moment, or just very aggressive, like Warriors, for example, is very aggressive, and for that -4 ability is not too shabby with your 4-drop to have a permanent +1/+1. You could easily get in for 4 or 5 damage. Almost feels like a Hell Rider ability. right off the bat with the Gideon. So, and then putting the 2/2 White Knight ally creature token on the battlefield and attacking the next turn. It's a very versatile card. I think that being 4 mana is probably a 1 of or a 2 of, curving out your very aggressive deck. And then control decks or mid-range decks might actually want it too, because it is a planeswalker that can protect itself, that can become a beater later on, like with the control-based decks. We saw the old Gideon play that route. And yeah, I think it's a very solid card. We'll go on to Titan's Presence. Titan's Presence is an additional cost to cast Titan's Presence. Reveal a colorless creature card from your hand. Exile target creature is power less than or equal to revealed card's power. Don't think Affinity quite wants this, because most of their cards, while it is in the hand, and you're not going to be revealing a card very much with Affinity. Affinity likes to barf out its hand quite quickly. But Titan's Presence just has to have a colorless creature card, which is Eldrazi or artifact creatures. The card that really comes into mind here is Wormcoil Engine. And you can exile target creature's power less than or equal to the revealed card's power. I kind of like this in Scred, to be honest with you, and then playing more of a Wormcoil Engine route. I think this is actually a perfect card for Scred Red. Titan's Presence is with, I don't know if it would replace Scred and you'd go into a different, like a big red type version with more Wormcoil Engines. Or you wouldn't really want Batterskull with Titan's Presence, but maybe a easier casted, a lower casting cost Eldrazi or a bigger artifact. Again, Wormcoil Engine seems like the perfect card with Titan's Presence. Tron, would it want it? I doubt it, unless Tron is going to go heavily into like an Eldrazi type list with Ulamog or Ulamog, the old Ulamog, and Emrakul and Kozilek, etc., etc., etc. Titan's Presence, I definitely think we'll see play, and it's a very solid card. Ruinous Path, 3 mana. This card's kind of awkward because it's sorcery speed. I think Hero's Downfall is much better than the Ruinous Path, but it does show us a cool new ability in the form of Awaken. So you can play it in Awaken 4. You can pay an alternate mana cost. So instead of paying 3, you pay 7. And you put 4+1/+1 counters on a land you control, and it becomes an elemental creature with haste. So you get a 4/4 elemental creature. Haste is kind of relevant because, well, it's really awkward because you're going to have to spend 7 mana. So good luck with 7 mana with leaving a land. Basically, you have to have 8 mana open, 8 lands open to cast this card, and then have a 4/4 with haste. The thing is that this card will have value late game in a control type list. Like, they might make the argument that somehow this card could be your finisher as make a land a 4/4. I don't know. It just seems the Awaken is going to happen very, very rarely with this card. And the destroy target creature Planeswalker is just inferior to its predecessor, being the Hero's Downfall at instant speed. We have seen cards be broken versus unplayable with that little pesky term called instant versus sorcery. You can see this in the form of plenty. I have to find especially with removal cards, that sorcery is unplayable, instant is on the verge of broken. So keep that in mind with Ruinous Path. Radiant Flames, this is what Zach and I were watching the video together, and we both were like shaking our head when we saw Radiant Flames, because I already know there's a card out of Khans of Tarkir that does 2 damage to each creature. And this one's sorcery speed as well. This Radiant Flames has a new Converge ability, which is basically Sunburst. Radiant Flames deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast Radiant Flames. And so Radiant Flames is going to do 1 damage no matter what, because you're going to be using it for a red. And then if you, like, what I think is Jeskai is probably going to, Jeskai or Mardu are going to be the best for this. Even Jund, I guess. If Jund comes back, if you spend all 3 of the mana, it's 3 damage to each creature. But it was just very weird. I don't think that Radiant Flames is a rare. It feels to me like an uncommon, not really rare. So I'd hate to see this in the rare slot. I think it's still inferior to its predecessor once again, being Anger of the Gods, which exiles cards. And exile would be kind of sweet, actually, with the processor. We'll get over the processor very shortly here. So Radiant Flames, I just don't like it in that rare slot. Just seems to be a little bit weak, a little bit too situational. with, even if you're in a multicolored deck, what happens if you have 2 red and a blue? It's only doing 2 damage when you probably want to do 3. And maximum what it can do is 3 mana, because you can't spend mana that doesn't exist in its converted mana cost. So let's skip over the lands really quickly and just go back over to the other spoiled cards. So you have the Reef Hydra, which is just filler beyond filler. There's better Hydras. It's a typical Hydra that grows. Trample, Landfall. If you use a forest instead of a regular land, it gets 2 counters instead of 1. Yeah, it's okay. Nice filler rare. And it's going to go straight to the bulk bin or to the casual Timmy bin. And then we also have the Incubator Drone, which has the Devoid, which is a mechanic that basically says this card is colorless. And when Incubator Drone enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion. So they're Scions now instead of 0/1s, they're 1/1s. That you can sack to add 1 to your mana pool. One thing about this, though, is you got to think that I think that Liliana, Heretic Healer, gets a lot better with Eldrazi Scions and Spawns, as it's a creature that's easy to sacrifice to flip over Liliana, Heretic Healer. We also have the Blight Herder, which is the processor. So here's where the processor comes into play, and it's going to work pretty well with your opponent using Delve. I hope there's a better processor than this Blight Herder, because even if the Blight Herder, you end up using its ability, it's 5 mana for 3 1/1s and a 4/5. We've seen cards like this not too long ago with, especially like the Populate. There's some Populate cards. You see, it seems to be like there's one in each set that puts out a number of tokens for a high converted mana cost. And a 4, 5, and 3, I don't quite know if this is playable. The one upside is it does have ways you can sacrifice creatures to add your mana pool. But basically what the processors are going to do is they're going to take cards from your opponent's exile zone. Because for new players, exile is still a zone. It's very much like your graveyard, but it's in another zone called exile, which up until this point had very, 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 very little ways to interact with the exile zone. But it seems like these processors are going to add a new angle to the exile, or just a whole new reason for the exile zone. And so you're going to be bringing those back from their exile to their graveyard, and then if you do that, then you get you'll be able to put 3 1/1s out. So with Delve very prominent right now, this Blight Herder is going to have value, but I don't quite know if it's there as playable. I think it is, because that's 7 power for 5, and it's split up within 4 targets, which then you can use these later on to ramp. So if there's anything that triggers off of like sacrificing cards, which I know that there is some cards from especially Dragons of Tarkir that uses the sacrifice ability, then yeah, Blight Herder might actually be useful. It's right in that gray area. It's a gray card too, of playable and non-playable, and we'll have to wait and see with this card. So Mist Intruder, nothing special there, just a filler card. And Barrage Tyrant, again, nothing really special, just a bulk rare. You can sacrifice a colorless creature, deal damage equal to its power to target creature or player. 3 mana. It's going to be 2. I think it's me. And this is such a Kevin card. I like these cards that sacrifice stuff because I usually can find some little combo or synergy with them. But I think for 5 mana for a 5/3 and then 3 mana activation. And the little tag here, another colorless creature, so you can't even sacrifice itself. It's going to be a little bit hard for the Barrage Tyrant. Probably too hard to justify playing this in a constructed deck. In Limited, it's going to be a bomb, but it's a rare. I mean, rare should be bombs in Limited. So then we have some other filler with the Eldrazi Devastator and the Kozilek's Chandler. These are both... Chandler's kind of very awkward, too. It's a 5 mana for a 4/4 and add 2 mana mana pool. At that point, who wants to tap a 4/4 to add mana to your mana pool? You want to be attacking or doing something. And these other ones were spoiled. I guess I haven't done a spoiler video yet, but the Omnath was spoiled a few days ago. Gideon's Reproach. Nice little card. I think this will see play. Deals 4 damage to attacking or blocking creature for 2 mana. That's solid. It's a very solid instant speed card. Omnath Locus of the Rage. I think this card is kind of cool with See the Unwritten. So See the Unwritten can actually get this guy out. And then Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token on the battlefield. So if one land or if a fetch land is actually activated, you get some major value out of this Omnath Locus of Rage. Unfortunately, I think this guy wanted to be in like a mono Green Devotion list. And, well, you might have some good ways to ramp this guy out. This guy probably will see play in Standard. if it can get the right shell. It's a very powerful card. Again, one fetch. This has to survive one turn, and you fetch a land, and it'll finish the game with 2/5/5 elemental creatures. It also says whenever it dies or another elemental you control dies, it deals 3 damage to our creature player. Elemental's kind of cool because you got to think Master of Waves or Young Pyromancer, they spit out elementals, and those are very easy to spit them out, and then when those die, that's 3 damage to our creature player. That's a pretty sweet card. Like, this card has a lot of potential. Tons of potential here with Amma Focus of Rage. Next time we have the Defiant Bloodlord, which is a flying, whenever you gain life, target opponent lose that much life, which is what? Sanguine Bond. So this is Sanguine Bond on a body, which I think is actually a little bit worse than on an enchantment. I think Sanguine Bond was, what, 5 mana, though? So it's just another piece for Commander. I don't think that it's going to be constructed playable as 7 mana. You can do a lot better stuff for 7 mana. Like a, isn't that the mana cost? Almost an Ugin. Alright, Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder deals X damage provided as you choose among your target creatures or players. It's sorcery speed. It's solid. It's a solid card. More for limited than constructed. Again, a Devotion-based deck would have loved this card, but Devotion is going away. We don't know how powerful Ramp will be, but Nykthos Shrine of Nyx seems to be the card that really could exploit like Rolling Thunder type cards. Hedron Archive is actually pretty juicy. You add 2 mana to your mana pool and you can sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. So after it's done its ramp job, then you can sacrifice it to draw cards. That's pretty sweet. And then we have some other fillers here. This Guardian of Tazim's filler. The Rally mechanic's pretty sweet. Rally is whenever an ally enters the battlefield, all of your creatures gain something. This one is going to be indestructible. I don't know if 5 mana is going to be relevant enough, because you're going to be wanting to use a lot of cards here. And so far, the allies that existed beforehand were all really small. And 5 mana just seems a little bit too heavy of a curve for indestructible. Yes, it does affect the board immediately. If it had Flash, maybe this card would be a lot better. But I don't really like it as it stands. Oblivion Sour was spoiled quite a while ago. This one's a very sweet card. Whenever you cast Oblivion Sour, target opponent exiles top 4 cards of his or library. Then you may put any number of land cards that player owns from exile on the battlefield under your control. It's just a sweet card. If you can, with 4 cards, you're most likely going to get 1. I don't know if it's quite playable as a 5/8, but it's interesting. For 6 mana, we know that colorless mana is going to be able to be produced quite easily. Don't think that like any deck in Modern quite wants it at the moment. I don't think Tron or like Tooth and Nail. Yeah, neither one of those really wants it. So then we have cards that have been spoiled quite a while ago. We have the Odometer Drone with Ingest. When that deals damage, it mills, but instead of mills, it exiles. When Odometer Drone enters the battlefield, if you control another colorless creature, each opponent loses 2 life. This is actually kind of sweet for like a Rally of the Ancestors reanimation deck. If you get enough of these in the graveyard, it has an enter the battlefield effect that it can actually work, but you'd have to have a lot of stuff that does that. So, Forerunner of Slaughter. Devoid, this card has no color. Target colorless creature gains haste until end of turn. It's not bad, though. 2 mana for a 3/2. Those tend to see play. It's just a very... Black-red recently hasn't been very aggressive, though, but this is an aggressive card that can then give haste. It can actually give haste to itself. So for 3 mana, it's a 3/2 haster. That's not bad at all. This is a very solid uncommon. Veteran War Leader. Veteran War Leader's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. Tap another untapped ally. Veteran War Leader gains Vigilance, Vigilance, First Strike, or Trample. Not bad, not bad. We've seen these before, and it's decent in tokens. It'll be decent in allies. It'll be decent in like a weenie deck, but it needs some help. Just more of a filler rather than anything. Sheer Drop, destroy target tap creature. It's a nice little. Then Awaken, it can give a 3/3. This is a very solid pick in. This is a trap card though. What people think is actually a really, really good card in Limited. In Limited, a lot of times you want your removal spells to have immediate effect, and a tap creature is a lot harder to kill than an untapped creature, so you're always behind when you play cards like this. You can't kill a card they've just put out. You have to wait till it's been attacked. So you're either killing a 2-drop and not killing their 3-drop, or even their 4-drop if you're behind on a turn. And you have to wait for it actually gets value and actually attacks you. And Sorcery Speeds is just really, really awkward with this card. But it's a solid card in Limited. And the Retreat to Kazandu. which says whenever land enters the battlefield, you can put a +1 counter or gain 2 life. Again, a very, very solid limited card, which might see play in a... I think that this actually, in a green-white enchantment deck, isn't bad. It's not bad at all, but we're losing a lot of the cards that were very clutch in the green-white enchantment deck. But all in all, let's go back to the land cycle, and we'll explain about the land cycle. Full art lands are back, and they will not be in every pack. They'll be in every few packs. And then there will also be full art, and I can't remember if we'll have to find out more information on this, but there's also full art, I believe 25 other cards, or maybe 20 counting these, I can't remember. There's a cycle of the new cards. Yeah, so there's going to be 20 other cards besides the ones above that will have the option of being full art, and they're going to be the same rarity as a foil mythic. Or foil rare, I think is what they said. So I think foil rares get 2 per box right now. So there's going to be 2 full art premium. They have a different border. I wish there was one spoiled here that we could actually see. Mythic spoiler. I'm sure it will come up in a few days or a few hours here. They have kind of a crazy border. But there'll be one of these prairie streams. And what we do know is shocks and fetches. So what I'm assuming is all the shocks and all the fetches. That means Khans of Tarkir, fetches, and the fetches from the fetches from Zendikar. So that will elevate the price a little bit from the fetches from Zendikar, actually quite a bit, because I think that people will actually want these from the for their premium like legacy and modern decks and commander decks. And so they'll be selling off, a lot of these modern players will be selling off their fetches that aren't these special new lands. So I'll try to find a picture here in a second. So that is going to be sweet. I mean, it's going to help elevate. It's going to sell boxes like crazy. The thing I think that Magic has to be careful at is I used to collect, when I was a little kid, I used to collect baseball cards. And when we first started collecting baseball cards, they were just normal baseball cards. And then they made premium baseball cards or like silver lettering rares. And then it was like foils, then holographics, then 3-dimensional, then it just got stupid. And then full packs with them. So Wizards has to walk this fine line of how, if they print too many of these special cards, or if they do, it just devalues the specialness of them. But right now, I think I've been calling for this for a long time. One of the things that I hated when Mythic Rares were first spoiled or first reintroduced into Magic is that to get staple cards for a lot of decks, just think Jason the Mind Sculptor, when everyone needed 4 Jason Mind Sculptors. And it was a mythic. It was so hard. It was, I think that, so there's 4 mythics, 3 to 4 mythics per box, and then 10 to 15 mythics per set. And so 1 Jace every 4 boxes was usually, I think, or one every 3 or 4, I think was the average. And it just made the price of that card just go insane and made a high price point or price entry for the tier 1 competitive standard deck. And what I was saying is, why mythic? They should have just done alternate art rares or like a foil type thing for people that want this mythic feeling, like the gambling aspect to opening a pack, like the lottery aspect of opening a pack, that didn't affect the gameplay. Like, I can understand drafts. Like, they wanted mythics because they didn't want mythics to really warp drafting. Mythic needed to, what I've been explained by Mark Rosewater is mythics were supposed to do mythical things. They're supposed to really affect the board state when they came into play. So they didn't really base mythic on power level. It is based on ability, power of the ability if it were to happen. So it didn't have to be the greatest card ever to be a mythic. It just had to do something big. And I'm hoping that they will do more of that for the chase money cards. They will do more aesthetic stuff rather than things that affect the gameplay. Because the entry to join a format is huge. Like, it detracts a lot of players from competitive play when they can't afford decks. So anyway, let's refresh this page and see if they've I think that I'll have to find out. Oh, I'll do in my next video. We'll find where we can find it. Oh, Zach showed me where.
It's on Google.
On Google. Well, I'll have to find it here, and Chloe's barking. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. We will keep you updated with Mythic spoilers and whatnot. Let me know what you think about, especially Ulamog and Gideon, if you think that they are as good as I think they're both really decent cards, and I think they'll see play. I don't think they're anything that's format warping. They both seem to be perfectly balanced. So anyway, this has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.